And we are back. Peace, love, and blessings, everyone. Yes, it is Thursday, and you know that is Black is STEM Day. That is STEM Files Day. Welcome to the number one platform, the best platform on the internet, the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. On tonight's awesome episode, we have a STEM Files alumni, newly minted physician, fellow nation baby, this all-around beautiful individual, Dr. Maryam Farrakhan on exposing youth to medicine. Tune in for this dynamic episode after this. That intro never gets old. Again, family, welcome back to our beautiful platform, the STEM Files. We highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Family, we are live on Facebook at the STEM Files, as well as YouTube at the STEM Files. Follow us, Tariq Cardiac, your brilliant engineer on IG, as well as the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Family, as we move forward, listen, I'm happy to be here. I am your humble co-host, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrillion Engineer. I am a civilian mechanical engineer focusing on naval ship fluid systems with a background in material science and engineering, the study of the various materials and their properties, how they're influenced by their various structures. Always joined by my more illustrious, my bro, big bro, but he really my little bro. Tariq Cardiac, what's going on, bro?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, bro. Trust and believe I am no more illustrious than my brother, but my name is Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist with a concentration in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm excited for tonight's show. We have a 3-time guest back on the platform. She's been on here 2 other times to talk about her journey in Cuba and how she became a physician. Now, tonight, she's going to be talking about her programs and the different things that she's involved in when it comes to exposing youth to medicine and the career of medicine. So welcome back to the platform, Dr. Farrakhan.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. Every time you all do this great introduction, I'm like, little old me.
Thank you for joining us. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Jabril, you want to start it off?
Yes, sir. So, family, before we go any further, make sure you are smashing that like button. You're commenting. Give us questions, comments. Come on now, throw some black fists in the comments if you're ready for this great content, and make sure you sharing with everybody. I'm talking about family, friends, colleagues, your goldfish, your cat, that person you don't like but still want to see them succeed. All them people.
Right.
All right. And also, if you can't tell, your brother got a new little mic for everything. I want everybody to let me know how I sound in this new mic. All right. I got my podcast, professional podcaster voice. All right. But with that, fam, we're going to get started. Sis, it's been a while. Again, 3-time alum. Every time you're giving us more and more gems. We're talking about exposing youth to medicine. We're talking about things like mentorship. For those who this may be their first time engaging with you, just talk to us a little bit about your background. Who are you? You know, what's your story, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, so my name is Maryam Farrakhan. I know down in the chat says M Farrakhan, but I am. Let's see. I'm like, what should I say? I'm originally from Chicago by way of Washington, D.C., and moved out to L.A., went to UCLA for undergrad. I actually have I would say a pretty diverse background from African American studies, doing sociology and education, as well as mathematics in undergrad, and then going off to medical school, attending the Latin American School of Medicine in Havana, Cuba. And freshly back, I've been back for a little over a year now in the States and have been transitioning into the next phase. So career, getting myself ready for residency, and all that entails. So, Yeah, so I mean, Nation Baby, as you said, parents Lisa and Louis Farrakhan, and yeah, I never thought that medicine was gonna be my path, but it is, and I am enjoying the process, and I'm really, I guess I should speak a little bit about how I'm kind of marrying different passions together. And I think that's how
Absolutely.
I ended up getting into mentoring and mentorship just in general. Like I said, I have a background in African American studies, education, math, sociology. I really thought that as an undergraduate, I was going to become an educator. And most people don't know that about me. And it was really interesting when I got accepted and was about to be on my way off to medical school. My mom was like, I didn't know that you wanted to be a doctor.
Mm.
And it was like, Mom, you know me. I've always wanted to be a teacher, an educator. That's where
Mm,
I really, really thought that was where my life was going to take me. Being the minister's granddaughter, I always wanted to help Black people. And I thought that I would help in the liberation of Black people through education. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to teach high school and I'll probably teach math or science because I knew that that was where we struggled. And I
mm,
felt like high school would be the best place to really shape and mold and give opportunity to young students at kind of like that pivotal junction where it's like either society is about to write you off or you're about to
Right, right, right.
skyrocket onto a new journey and become great. So that was my desire. I went to UCLA thinking, okay, I'm studying math and I'm going to be a math teacher. And then the thoughts grew, the desire grew, and I said, okay, I'm gonna open up my own school one day. And then it just kept growing. It kept growing. I'm like, I'm gonna open up multiple schools, and I'm gonna
mm,
do international, and you know it was that was kind of where my mind was. And then the minister years prior had talked about Cuba. And I remember, and I don't know if I talked about this on the last
You
episode.
did. You
I
did.
did, yeah. Yeah, so I didn't think that medicine was going to be my journey. I was, encouraging, my cousin and my sister, and I was just like, man, if I had an opportunity like that. And I had the opportunity and took it and I ran with it.
mm.
Excellent,
Praise
excellent.
be to Allah. I got one more question, and I'll turn it over to Tariq. But we're talking about mentorship. We're talking about youth.
Mhm.
So there's an old adage, and it says, old men or elders for counsel, young men or youth for war. Is
Yeah.
there any aspect of that pertains to a mentality? And if so, how does that apply to maybe an old way of doing medicine to a new way of doing medicine for the health of our people moving forward?
Hmm. Now, I may have you repeat part of the question because where my mind went, I've definitely heard that saying, old men for counsel, young men for war. And when you were saying it, I started thinking of something, and I don't want to go too far off to the right before I make sure I answer your question.
Okay,
So say it
I'm
for
gonna
me
repeat
one
it.
more.
So
Okay.
the crux of it is exchanging the actual person or the man for a mentality. So you have an old way of doing medicine. You have a traditional way of administering services to people for their health. You know, is there a need, and what does that transition look like going from that old way to a new, more rejuvenative way for our people as we move forward into the future?
Well, sometimes, and it kind of makes me think about the saying, if it's broke, don't fix it type of thing. And
Mhm.
sometimes there's also there's a couple of different things at play, to be 100% honest with you. So I'm not going to say that everything that we're doing in the 21st century is better
Mm,
in terms of medicine and how we care for people and how we deliver care, right? Because, with me studying in Cuba and being in a society that doesn't have as many resources as a first world or a Western country or countries, they rely on so many of the skills, not necessarily other equipment and machines, but really mastering things like the physical exam and understanding how to diagnose, or having an impression of what a diagnosis is. So there's it's kind of, there's some pros and cons to both, right? Because when you see the advancement now, when we're talking about like telehealth or telemedicine and being able to reach communities that are maybe in rural areas, things like technology have afforded us the opportunities to increase or improve the health outcomes of our communities, right? But
yes,
at
ma'am.
the same time, when you're talking about now in the 21st century and how we're a society that's really thinking about money,
Right.
as
Come on.
patient turnover, we're seeing a patient and maybe the doctor gets 10 minutes, 15 minutes max with a patient,
Right.
so to me, that's kind of something new versus back in the day. The physician lived in a neighborhood with
Come
their
on.
Mm-hmm.
patients. They knew auntie and uncle and grandma, and they were in the community that they serve, so they could speak about, okay, this person really doesn't have the support that they need, and I'm going to have to come and give house calls or house visits to be able to ensure that you're receiving the services and the care and the attention that you need, and I can check on you, and I really know your lifestyle because I'm up close and personal. I have a connection with you versus just saying, I see you for 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe not even seeing them in person. So there's pros and there's drawbacks. So when we're talking about the old way of doing things versus how we do things now, there are things and jewels in both. I don't think that
Absolutely.
there's one that's necessarily better than the other, but we can look at health outcomes and how are people doing as a community. Black, Latinx, indigenous people, are we living longer? Are we healthier? Are we happy?
Mm,
I'm
right.
saying. So yeah, we might see the black middle class, maybe that's increasing, or wealth in the black community is increasing, but how's our mental health? You know what I'm
Come
Right,
saying?
on.
right,
Come
right,
on.
right.
How do we kind of gauge how we're really doing as a community? And there's multiple ways. It's multi-pronged. So I hope I
Absolutely.
answered your
You
question.
definitely did, and you
Absolutely.
took my mind. Thank you so much. To my mind on so many different points. I think you have old as a concept or a construct as jaded, or chronologically, far back, versus old as antiquated or no longer works. And then you
Right.
have new in the chronological sense, but you also have new as being something novel and also useful. So when you think about a mindset or a sphere of engagement that is new in the sense that it's actually working versus old in the sense this needs to be done away with, that's kind of the thought process I think a lot of people are at now with the pandemic and just moving forward. Like, what works for us as a people, what works for people in general, how can we prioritize the actual health and the actual development of people over just, okay, I'm trying to get a dollar, render a service to kind of protect myself, but also really be holistic in how we look at things. So thank you so much for that. Absolutely.
No problem. Honestly, when we think about age, we can think about it in so many different ways. Of course, we know over time the body starts to break down, and and that's the natural process with life, right? And although we
Right.
can preserve it as much as possible, there's also a beauty that comes with age, and we equate most times age with wisdom. Some wisdom,
Mm.
they're like, a lot of times when people are very wise and young, they're like, man, you have a lot of wisdom to be so young. Why?
Right, right, right.
That? Because with age, with time, with experiences, you know, the way it's supposed to happen is with age comes wisdom. So
Come
even though
on.
something is new, like we could talk about like a new iPhone or new technology that comes out, there's still trying to understand the kinks of what it is that they just created. And although there is an advancement and although there is beauty and science in that, there also comes new problems and new challenges that
Come
still have
on.
to be addressed and worked out. So old men
That's
for
right.
counsel, men for war. It's just, when I think about that, my mind was going to things about, medical apartheid and structural racism and
Come on
all of
with it.
Mm.
the
Come on with it.
as a
Come on
community,
with it.
right? And
Right,
how
right.
Yeah.
our elders can really be a guide and a mentor to us in trying to figure out how we can really solve these problems. But they've been dealing with these problems for years, decades.
Right.
And sometimes it requires us to reach out and speak with and dialogue and create strategy with our elders to solve a problem that has been generations. It's been happening, for decades and centuries. So I don't expect my elders to go out there and physically fight these different problems that we're dealing with
Come
in
on.
our community, in the nation,
Mm.
and the world, but they can give us the guidance so that the young persons can carry on that duty and that responsibility to ensure that we create a better society for our future generations, for our, like
Right.
it's just
Right.
simple. So
Right. Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Wow, wow. This is pretty cool. So tonight's episode is exposing youth to medicine, right?
Yes,
Right.
sir.
And I remember a few days ago I was asking Dr. Farrakhan if she could send me some pictures of her working, with the youth and whatever activities y'all got going on. But instead, she sends me a screenshot of a Zoom meeting. So uh, but the screenshot kind of inspired this question I'm about to ask. I saw a lot of faces, a lot of medical professionals, a lot of new doctors, some experienced doctors, and most of them are in the Nation of Islam. So I wanted to talk
Mm.
about how important it is, or what's it like for you to work with the doctors of the Nation of Islam, so that we can build the hospitals and the clinics and everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad envisioned and promised for his nation. What's that like?
Honestly, it's been absolutely phenomenal because we get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that we get it, it seems like just like a simple, nonchalant, like, what does that really mean? But I was talking to a colleague of mine, who, Dr. Naira Muhammad, she was on your show a few weeks back, I do believe. Um,
Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
right.
and we were just talking about, owning our own practice. And I was
Come on with it.
talking to her, and I was just like, you know what? I was researching, the types of practices that you can own, whether it be individual or group or your partner with the university. And I said, really, in order to have true autonomy, you have to have either in solo practice or group practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
Mm.
that really affords you the ability to truly work for yourself. So I started thinking about the time that we're living in and how a lot of people during COVID are realizing that they're dispensable, and how the messenger said that we would have to do for
That's
self,
right. You're gonna have to do it.
suffer the consequences. And I'm thinking about
Mm-hmm.
how so many people are afraid and fearful with this COVID-19 and having to get the jab and it being mandated and people losing their job or can't find a job unless they get vaccinated. And I said, man, if you had your own practice, you wouldn't even be
Come
tripping
on.
off now. You know
Come
what I'm
on.
saying?
Right.
When I speak to other physicians that are in the nation, we get it. Like we're so far beyond. First of all, we ain't scary. That's
Right.
first.
Right.
Like
How we gonna do this? I don't think we can
for
do it.
the
Nah.
scary, huh?
Right. Now I'm just thinking of all the different excuses that some of us can make about not building and oh no, we shouldn't go in that direction. We shouldn't do this. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense. But go ahead.
No,
I'm just venting.
and that's real. Like,
Right.
and when you have someone who is like-minded, and that's the beauty of it, the physicians that I've encountered in our nation, the ones that I have personally encountered, they're always about our community. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not,
Right.
oh, I'm just, I'm trying to get rich, because becoming a physician is not the
No.
quickest way to get rich.
No.
Anybody out there who's thinking,
That's a
hey,
hard ass job. Excuse my
want to be
language.
rich.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not it. This is,
Right.
unless you go unless you go abroad or get a full scholarship. Most of my colleagues that are physicians, 300, $400,000 in debt. Like that's normal to a student who's straight out of medical school. I mean,
Mm.
for me personally, I went to one of the top universities in the country. I went to UCLA, and I was an out-of-state student. So I ended up spending $200,000 just to get a bachelor's degree.
Come on.
So when you're talking about the minister and the messenger, like they know what they're talking about. And sometimes it's hard for us to appreciate what it is that they've been saying. They're like, yo, debt is slavery.
Come on.
Debt is a form of slavery. So when I speak to Naira or Dr. Naira or Dr. Mayada or Dr. Abdullah or Dr. Akili or Dr. Jessica, they truly are committed and invested to improving the health outcomes of our community.
Right.
And we are free. And I think that just it does our community such a great benefit and a great service, because they know that they can truly reach out to us, and it's coming from a place of genuine love and concern and respect. A lot of times, and it's so unfortunate, you will see physicians look down on their patients as if they're superior. But if you coming from Islam, you already know we have a love for our people, regardless of the situation or circumstance that we might find ourselves in, because we know that we're gods. So
Come
I
on.
love networking with us, and and I love bringing physicians into the knowledge that I have and exposing them to the teachings. It's just, I mean, because we know that us coming together is the solution to our problems.
That's
So
right. That's right. And big
Absolutely.
shout out.
nobody
Right.
answered your question.
It definitely did. And big shout out to all the other healthcare professionals in the Nation of Islam who work with these doctors that we just spoke of and who help them do what they do. The scientists, the public health experts, the nurses,
Nursing,
right? All of them.
Absolutely.
Like shout out
Absolutely.
to
All the
every single one of
superheroes.
y'all,
the
every
life,
single one.
Absolutely.
yes,
Yes,
all
the
of it,
EMTs, right?
clinical social workers. And you know what?
Exactly.
It's so interesting because in my immediate family, there's myself. I graduated from medical school a year ago. My sister just graduated from nursing school, maybe in the last 2 months. I have a sister who's a licensed clinical social worker. So we're like really kind of all in the health sphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big world.
It's,
There's plenty of work in there.
it's
Right.
Excellent,
Absolutely.
excellent. All right.
If
Oh, good, bro.
I was just going to say, family, as we're listening, I hope we understand. One of the things I love about having those in the biological sciences, and particularly when we talk about the doctors, the nurses, those who are really embedded in and very interested in the health of people, nothing else or none of the other disciplines really will be done effectively if we're not healthy. So as an engineer, right, who my discipline, we're responsible for the infrastructure of a world, right? We create and bring things into existence. But if I'm coughing on the couch somewhere, then how good is my output going to be? You talk about
You have a
teachers
lot
who
of
should be
output.
in my right. You know what I'm saying? If you talk about
Right.
teachers, right, educators who really bring forward the next generation of everything. Well, if they are in a hospital bed somewhere, how effective are they at their job? They're not. So we have to remember that those who are interested in and work for the betterment of the health of people around it are very important. And that brings me to my question. So we had a guest who works with us in Original Man Scientific in our patent division. His name is Neil Thompson. He also has a platform called Teach the Geek, but he made a comment I found interesting as pertains to exposing young people to STEM or Black people to STEM. He was saying that sometimes he feels that we just say expose people to STEM or Black people to STEM for the sake of doing it. He said, I want people to be legitimately interested in
Come on
STEM.
with
And
it.
I
Come
understood
on.
what he was saying, but I had a bit of a disagreement because, and this goes into my question, at what point do you still want to expose young people to something even if they might not yet be interested? Because my thing is, how do you know if you're interested yet if you haven't been exposed to it? So talk about the need of exposing young people to those productive and producing disciplines even before they may know that they have an interest in it.
That's a really, really great question. Um, and I can speak from my personal experience, but also just from being in the position that I'm in now as a fellow with the Sioux National Medical Association. First and foremost, yes,
Just waiting for you to
1950.
talk about it.
So, what I was going to say is, I recall when I was really young, probably in elementary. No, I definitely was in elementary school for sure. And I remember writing on the board Dr. Farrakhan, right? And at
Mm,
that time, I really didn't know anything about, a PhD or anything. I didn't know what that was called, the EDD or whatever. But I was like, I'm Dr. Farrakhan because I wanted to really go to the highest level of education that is possible, right? And when I decided to go to medicine, a lot of people would ask me, what made you go into medicine and how come you didn't choose medicine prior to you being an undergrad? And, was it something, personal or there was just a lot of questions around why medicine wasn't something I had wanted to do since I was 5 or 6, like most or the typical applicant for medical school. And I really couldn't give a reason, right? I never thought I can't be a doctor or I
Mhm.
can't be a physician, but I didn't know any physicians. Like I can't really even tell you when I saw my first Black physician. So I think it's important that we expose our young people to different career paths within STEM and within medicine because you can't be what you cannot see. You
come on
know,
now. Ooh, come on now.
you
Can't be
can't,
what you can't see. That's right.
right? You can't be what you can't see. And if you don't have exposure to something, you really won't think that it's an option. Now, granted, I grew up in a nation. I grew up believing we are gods to the core. So I never thought I can't be a physician because that's just above my level of intelligence. But
Mm,
I don't really recall seeing Black physicians showing me what it is that they do. Now we see educators all the time because we're in a classroom. We see ministers, we see secretaries, we
Right.
see principals, but how many times can you all talk about being exposed to physicians before I would say before middle school? Like personally.
That's right.
I'm
Yeah.
throwing a question back on y'all.
No. To be honest,
Well,
so for me, being exposed to a physician, first off, a black physician, out
Mm-hmm.
outside of going to the doctor, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot recall being exposed to a physician, let alone a black physician at an early age. But what I will say is because I knew at an early age, not that I was not interested in medicine, but I knew kind of where my track was, and I was leaning towards engineering. It just wasn't put in front of me because that wasn't what I was leaning toward. So like
So,
I knew my
so how,
yeah. So that was my thing.
so how did engineering get put in front of you? How were you exposed to engineering? Because I
So
don't think you just wake up and you say, I'm gonna be an engineer. You might not even know the term for what
right,
it is, but you like, I like that. You see something, you be like, that's what I want to do.
all right.
What
So
was that?
So that's a great question. I guess
I
I'm
love
getting
it.
asked
I love
questions.
it.
No, this is
He's getting
great. She
interviewed.
does. This is great. This is great. So yes, and also my podcast voice. I'm gonna say in podcast voice. So at an early age, right? So being born and raised in the Nation of Islam, right? I went from a private institution to a private Islamic institution to homeschooling for nearly a decade. During that homeschooling time, my mother had the great honor and privilege to be able to specifically school my brother and I solely for that time. And she was constantly putting things in front of us to see what we gravitated, toward. So whether it was the violin, whether it was a specific curriculum, it was connects, it was model trains, it was model planes, it was crystal growing kits. So the critical thinking and problem solving mind, the mind of a, you know, engineer was embedded very early. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I finally went to an engineering based magnet high school, it was kind of like that seed that was planted. So and then from there, I'm like, oh, this is called engineering. This is, and I learned from there. So it was seeds laid not on stony ground, but on infertile soil that with the right watering, that was the consistent engagement and involvement and mentorship was able to sprout into what I am striving to be today, which is a full-on fledged engineer. So that's kind of how that kind of happened for myself when it comes to engineering.
And I think that first of all, shout out to moms, right?
Absolutely.
Facts. Big
Absolutely.
facts.
Shout out to
Mom,
moms.
listen, and then dad for backpacking that household, in terms of making it possible for her to do that. Look, man, I'm blessed and I'm thankful.
So one of the and honestly, that is something that we kind of see um
Mm-hmm.
two things happening, right? Because I see sisters in DC and Maryland and LA that are really taken to homeschooling and educating, exposing
Right.
their children and the believers and our extended family to different fields, right? But
Come
then
on.
you also have on the flip side the fact that we're living in an economy where most of the time the man and the woman, the husband and the wife are at work. And so there's this push into public school and unfortunately not necessarily getting all of the one-on-one attention that is needed or the diversity in curriculum to expose students to such beautiful fields to be in
Mm.
outside of the arts and humanities. And like we said, we're talking about nation building. So like I said, shout out to moms. So mentorship and exposure. And before you can even get to the mentoring aspect, it is the exposure that is necessary, right?
Come on.
And I,
Yes, ma'am.
taking children to, I remember career day or, things like that. I don't remember having a career day when I was in middle school and elementary, but um having things like that where they expose students, young, impressionable minds to different fields are important, right? Because
Right.
one of the the things within the SNMA, and I guess I should really take the time to talk about the Student National Medical Association just briefly
Yes,
so
ma'am.
people can understand the context. Um, but the Student National Medical Association was established in 1964 on October 4th and became incorporated. And they are the largest and the oldest student run national organization in the United States. And they specialize or prioritize the needs of Black and Brown communities to create clinically excellent, culturally competent physicians. And
Come on.
so within the Student National Medical Association, which consists of more than 7,000 members across the entire US and the Caribbean, you have these different chapters within, I would say, 10 regions, which are all um, within either medical institutions or undergraduate institutions where they're really supporting underrepresented minority students or marginalized students excel within the medical field or as they are on their journey in pursuit of getting a medical degree and becoming a physician. So within the Student National Medical Association, there are a couple of different programs and committees that focus specifically on mentorship, pipeline. And when I say pipeline, I know some people may get a little frustrated with that term when you think about, the our indigenous brothers and sisters, and
Right, right,
pipeline
Mm,
that has been really that they're trying to put in their communities with oil and things like that to try to get the oil. But when I
come
say
on.
pipeline, I want to kind of veer away a little bit from that and start saying pathways. So we're trying to create pathways to medicine, right? And one of the ways that we do that a couple of different ways, but one of the ways that we do that is through the Pipeline Mentoring Institute. And it exists within the SNMA to truly address, I guess, three primary weaknesses in
Mm,
the recruitment, matriculation, and retention of underrepresented minorities in the healthcare professions. And one of those ways is we're thinking about how there has been either passive or absent recruitment and targeted exposure or lack of targeted exposure of underrepresented minorities or marginalized students into the field of study, right? So
yes, ma'am.
just just putting out a flyer and saying, oh, think about becoming a physician. What is that? you
right,
know
right.
Having an opportunity and saying, oh, we hope your students come, that's not enough. That's,
Right.
or even the fact that some schools don't even have exposure to different fields within STEM at the high school or secondary level is problematic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that means that there's no targeted exposure to a community that has been historically um, mistreated within the medical field, right? And who unfortunately have poor outcomes because of systemic racism and systemic issues within the medical arena. So, um, you know, recruitment, exposure are so fundamental. And how we do that has to be not only um, very strategic, but it has to be something that is continuous. You can't do a one off kind of exposure and then that just be it, because what happens when the student is interested in medicine or is interested in engineering? you know uh, I think you kind of talked about it, Jabril, when you said, okay, my mother was exposing me, and then it was like kind of solidified at the high school or secondary level, because now I'm going into an institution where now they're really focusing on STEM, or they're focusing on engineering. So I think the exposure and being intentional is very important, but also following up that exposure with some consistency and other opportunities is critical, and that's pretty much what I do.
Okay, bet. So
Praise
let's
be to
get to
Allah.
some let's get to some of these questions.
These 8,000 questions.
Right. So we got something
Yes,
from my beautiful wife, Sister Kiera. She asked,
come on.
What's some advice you wish was told to you from a mentor that you now tell your mentees? And that's a powerful question, because Lord knows,
I like that last
people
part.
knew what they knew now, right?
That is.
I like.
Oh man. Okay. What would I tell a mentee? Let me see.
What do you tell them now?
Let me keep it up there for you.
Yeah, right. Keep it up. Okay. What's some advice you wish was told to you from a mentor that you now tell to your mentees?
Yes, ma'am.
I really like that. You know what? Honestly, I think asking for help, asking for further guidance, and it's okay to be unsure, because I was one of those, you know, students where I just wanted to have it all together at all times, and I really wouldn't tell you where I felt like I was lacking or where I needed additional support. So, just being vocal, just really being vocal and saying, hey, I don't understand this, or I'm gonna need additional support. Yeah, I think that is something and I tell my students all the time. I say, listen, if y'all need me, I'm here for you. Don't feel like you can't speak up and say something to me, because even though you look at me as Dr. Farrakhan, I'm still someone who is almost here to you. And I want you to succeed. And I don't want you to think that there's this, hierarchy and that you can't talk to me. So I think that's what I would say.
Wow. All right. So at this time, I'm full of like questions, but I'm gonna let the last part of the show just be for the audience. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get a message from our Black STEM highlight. And then we're gonna go right into the Final Call newspaper, and then we're gonna finish out the show with the questions from the audience. Sound good?
Yes, sir. Let's get it.
All right. So here's our Black STEM highlight.
So I have to ask the question: did you register for the STEM Success Summit yet? You haven't, or you have? Look, listen. Regardless, you and everybody you know need to go and secure your free ticket for the 3rd annual STEM Success Summit. We're going to be talking about personal branding, personal wellness, career strategy and development, entrepreneurship, healthcare and medicine. We also have the brand new STEM Success Award. We're going to acknowledge and allow you to vote on people in the community that are doing great things. We also have some scholarships that we're going to be giving away from one of our sponsors, not to mention our Career and Community Expo. Go to 2021.stemsuccesssummit.com. Get your free ticket. This is going to be your opportunity to join our collective community and synergize our efforts so that we can all make a better impact and bring more value in our career. So I see you there. I'll be looking for you. No, you, for real. I'm looking for you.
Yes, that was a special message from Dr. Nehemiah Mabry. He is a civil engineer. Specializing in bridge development. He has a beautiful company called STEM Media, and it's all about what we're talking about today: exposing and really taking the time to get to care about and influencing our community, especially our youth, with STEM. So definitely check that out. The link is in the description. But let's go ahead and just finish out the program with these dope questions. Let's go first from Washington, D.C., Shahid, the scientist. So far, the conversation has So far, the conversation has covered the necessity to not just talk about STEM and medicine, but to expose youth through demonstration. What help do you need to expand that systematically? He's thinking like an engineer, so systematically, like
Come on,
how can you build a
we
system of this?
You know what?
right.
You know what? And that's so funny because I'm always in need of help, right? And assistance to push this agenda. Right now, I currently have created and kind of designed and implemented a program called the Clinical Shadowing and Mentorship Program. And that program has about 50 mentees, all assigned to physicians where they have time to meet one-on-one and speak about, the path to medicine and, what should they be doing on their journey. And throughout this kind of 1 year, we created a 1-year program. Myself and my colleagues, we created a 1-year program that um, allows students to not only have direct physician mentorship, but it also has embedded workshops on a monthly basis to feed their development as future physicians, because a lot of us will talk diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a very hot topic right now. But we have to also understand, as people of color, as the original man and woman, how do we navigate these spaces of higher education and be a voice for our community, but also how to get the support and ally, and how do we get allies as we see that there are so many health disparities within our community. So the funny thing is, I am hoping to actually launch a program in DC, and I know Shahid
Mid-Atlantic, stand up.
is in DC. So I'm hoping to actually start a program at a charter school in DC for high school students, which would be kind of doing similar things, but more exposing the students to not only medicine, but healthcare related fields. And the more and more I'm doing this, like Tariq said, I sent him a screenshot or a picture of me doing mentoring work, and it was all on Zoom. And that, although that's not ideal, what I have seen is that we're able to really guide and give advice and trusted advice to students nationally. And now it makes me think about our nation and how we can really implement programs like this in our nation easily to build our physician workforce, right? So that we can build hospitals. So what do I need? Some great minds, some great minds first.
Got him.
That's first and foremost. Second, some individuals who are not only great thinkers, but can plan and strategize and have a resource, a network.
Got him.
I mean, financial resources are always cool, but having, I think people who can have that mind, who have a network, is probably the biggest, thing that I'm looking for right now.
Praise be to Allah. Ministry of Science and Technology, stand up.
We got plenty.
Ministry of Science Technology, stand up. All right. Come on now.
Excellent. All right, so we got and the Black Math Academy. Let me know if they answered your question about. I think trying to find that question. Hold up.
I see it. Are you talking about this one?
Yeah, this one. I think that might have answered that question. Let us know if it did, bro.
Wait, let me see. What did it say?
He said.
Go ahead. I'm gonna let you do it.
Oh yes, no problem. Sorry, I'm a little excited. He asked, "How do you give these Black students access to the medical arena? Internships, workshops, apprenticeships?" And I think you started to go into some of that, and we just want to know if what you did say answered some of it, if not all of this question.
I can add a little bit to that. Okay, so specifically in the cohort that I deal with about 50 plus students, which 80% or about 85% of whom are African American, and then you have about 10% Latinx and a few Middle Eastern and Asian students within the cohort that I specifically work with.
The family, the whole family.
Yes. So one of the things that we do is we provide our students with we provide them with weekly virtual collective clinical shadowing opportunities. So, for example, we had Dr. Keeley and Dr. Jessica, so neurologists and naturopathic physicians, and we have literally a slew of physicians who are coming on not only to talk about their pathway, but expose people to the clinical arena. And when I say that, we talk about cases. We talk about things that are normal, abnormal, HIPAA violations or HIPAA compliance, and what that looks like, and how to be culturally competent as a physician. So we speak about that. And the students really, really love that. We've exposed our students to opportunities to do research at the undergraduate level. So whether or not they're undergrad or graduate or post-bac students, they've had the opportunity to partner with Kaiser Permanente to do research with not only undergrad, but all the way up to physicians who are in family medicine. And some of the workshops that we have coming up are going to be geared more towards what we would call, I guess, like ambulatory medicine, or being able to, I guess, kind of stabilize a patient before an ambulance can come. So, for example, gunshot wounds and stop the bleed, understanding what stroke looks like, and things like that. So that's kind of the things that we're doing, all virtual. But inshallah, depending on how things pan out with the pandemic, we'll be going in person. But yeah, that's what we're doing. So I hope that answered
the good stuff
a little bit more thoroughly.
And that's beautiful. So now I wanted to ask you, so are you just doing these workshops within the confines of the association, or do you offer these, like say if the Ministry of Health in Richmond, Virginia wanted to come and do a webinar with you on that? I'm just
hypothetically speaking.
You know what?
If we invited you to do a webinar on that,
you know what? So the funny thing is, so right now I do the program under the Student National Medical Association, but what I love is that the SMA is so embedded in the community that it's like never a problem to join forces. We're always partnering. And the more and more I do this, the more I'm like, man, I should just get my entire nation involved, because there's so many youth who are interested in medicine, or may be interested in medicine if they were exposed to it. So I think that
I tell you, the Ministry of Health in Richmond, Virginia, I'm telling you, and I'm not trying to, brag about my team or nothing like that, or just talk about what we do, but you only in DC. You literally 2 hours up the road.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Oh yeah. And we can, know what? And I'm so down for doing like a 3-day CPR, stop the bleed, stroke, like in person.
Come on with it.
You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yes.
That's not something that is too difficult to create. Like when I tell you that I'm really, really learning, and I love the position that I'm in, because when I first started this mentorship opportunity, the clinical shadowing and mentorship program, we had about 400 students that applied to this to be a part of an inaugural program, right? And when you are starting something off, it's your baby. There's everything that could goes wrong, right?
Yes. Jabril and I bear witness.
You learn, you grow, and you're like, yo, I can do this. We're going to do this, and it's going to get better. And it just evolves. So, I mean, listen, I'm all for it. I'm like, let's do a whole tour. Let's go to all the Ministry of Health. We could start on the East Coast, then go down south.
Yes.
I mean, why not?
Richmond going to be the first. So we right here.
Hold on.
Don't let no other Ministry of Health, local Ministry of Health in this country get it first.
Hold on, she said let's do a whole tour. She said let's. Right. I said, okay, yes, man. She ready for it. I bang with that. That's it. We gonna get working on that. Listen, I'm feeling a little generous, fam. I'm feeling a little generous. Look, if it's okay with y'all, and we got so many great questions and everything, and we want to get as many. If we want to go a little bit, after our normal time, just a little bit. If y'all want to rock with us, if y'all want us to go maybe a couple minutes over our normal time of an hour, y'all still got these questions. Put some ones in the chat for me. We're not gonna hold y'all long. But we want to make sure we get to as many of these beautiful questions as possible to make sure y'all are getting everything and all of the content that y'all need to make decisions and to really just follow up on your passions and what you want going forward. So we're gonna keep asking questions. Oh, yep. So brother Josh already went. But before, he said one.
Right. Before we do that, before we keep with the questions, let's go ahead and talk about the final call real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and share a message about what Final Call Digital is, and then Jabril just kind of tell us what this week's issue is about. Sound good?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, check it out, family.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call Digital Edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
All right, and what is this week's issue about, beloved?
Yes, sir. So this week's issue of the Final Call newspaper. Let me bring it up. Actually, there you go. All right, the latest issue. I'm pushing the button. Yes, sir.
Now, where you going?
This edition of the Final Call newspaper is UFOs and America's national security. Family, yes, we know they exist. They say there are UFOs on the paper, but we in the Nation of Islam, we say IFOs, so they are very much identified. For those who know, they've been documented over years, decades, and this edition will deal with these crafts and different anecdotes from pilots, military personnel, etc., as they step forward and share what are called UFOs and how they shut down U.S. nuclear facilities and other defensive weapons systems. What are these crafts? Who is behind them? And why can't America defeat them? Make sure, family, similar to what you just saw, if you want to follow Final Call newspaper on all platforms. Get your latest issue at finalcalldigital.com. If you are in the Philadelphia area or the Richmond, Virginia area, you make sure you tap in with your bros, your brilliant engineer, Tariq Cardiac. We will make sure you can get your physical edition weekly, as well as what you have digital. Family, this is the baddest news source on the planet. I bear witness, and that's no gas. That's all the honor to this paper. So much beautiful content. Make sure to get yours today.
Absolutely. And we just did a show on UFOs with our brother Ilya Rashad.
Come on now.
26th anniversary of the Man March 2 weeks ago. So definitely check out that episode. If you're on the STEM Files YouTube page, on the Facebook page, just scroll down a little bit, until you get to that video, and definitely check that out. All right, family. So let's get back to these questions. Let's see where we at with it.
I think brother, I saw one from brother Sister Kiera again, another beautiful question. Let's see. Do I want to ask this one?
No. I think Exo Taj is next.
Okay, yes, sir. Let me get that one.
But we in fact, let's save that for a little later.
Okay. All right. We're gonna get it to it. It's so many.
Bro. Don't worry, Todd.
It's so many. All right. I'm gonna go to Brother Joshua.
All right, good.
I'm going to Brother Joshua. All right. So our brother Joshua, who was a guest on our show a couple of episodes ago, beautiful company doing some great things in the engineering field. He says, how great is the need for residency and fellowship pathways along with pathways to med school? He says, STEM Files keep fire content coming every week. Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that,
beloved.
How great is the need for residency and fellowship pathways? I'm trying to figure out what exactly does he mean by that.
Okay.
So go ahead, throw it in the chat.
Go ahead and break it down, bro.
so I can see, because residency and fellowships are something that recent medical graduates do after attaining their medical degree. So
Right.
when we were talking earlier, that on the job training, that's what your residency is. It's that on the job training, and you are going from being an actual student, and you're still a student because you're learning and evolving, but now you're attaining the credentials to have a licensure and being able to practice, but you're under the supervision or guidance of um, an attending physician who's double checking to make sure you're not doing nothing that could harm the patient. So I kind of want to make sure I understand what he's asking, because I'm a little unclear. Do you all understand?
I think that, well, my interpretation, and Brother Josh, you still on with us. Make sure you drop something in the chat, just kind of further explaining a bit of your question. But as I was reading that, I was kind of under the assumption that what was the point is just either alternative routes, if there are any, to residency, or just the importance of having those options. So residency, fellowship, along with general pathways to med school. So when you think about, I guess the traditional way to get there and potential alternative paths, or just making sure that more of those pathways or opportunities are available to our people, I guess speak to the importance of that as a whole.
Well, you can't clinically practice as a physician who diagnoses and prescribes
Right.
sort of treatment plan or medication in particular to patients unless you are board certified. And board certification comes after your residency training. And of course, you can always, unfortunately, you can have your license revoked for a number of different reasons, and one could be just not playing their game the way that they want it to play. However, you can't bypass residency unless you don't have a desire to practice clinically. So right now I have an MD, I have a doctor of medicine degree, but I cannot diagnose and prescribe medications to patients without going through a residency. So I could work as a researcher, I could do medical research, I could do biomedical research, I could do a lot of things
on with it.
with the pharmaceutical companies if I desire. But if I want to see patients and I want to diagnose technically and be able to actually prescribe medication and say this, you need an ACE inhibitor, I would have to complete that residency training. So that's not something that you can bypass. Fellowships are an added on education after a residency. For example, I'm interested in obstetrics and gynecology. However, I can do a residency, a fellowship, which is additional training to get skills in maternal fetal medicine, which is basically dealing with high risk obstetrics, people that may have HIV but are pregnant, or sickle cell anemia and are pregnant. And so their pregnancy adds an added complication or an added risk to their actual their obstetrics case. So those aren't things that you can really bypass if you want to practice clinically. But there is a need to have all levels of mentors within a pipeline or pathway program, right? Because you have people who are at the pre-med level, maybe high school. Mind you, SNMA does programming from K through 12, but then they also do undergraduate post-bac or master's post-bac, and they do mentoring in medical school. So this is literally like really trying to create that pipeline, as we call it, or a pathway to really see you succeed and become a physician. But that doesn't mean that mentorship stops there, because a person who is just a newly minted physician also needs mentorship. For example, myself, I want to open up my own practice. I definitely have to have mentorship in that realm, because Yeah, I'm
Right,
MD.
right.
I never own my own practice, and why learn just off reading a book when I can learn from someone who has had experience within that realm? So that's what I would just say
Praise
to
be to
that
Allah.
question.
I think that was a
Excellent.
beautiful
And I think
answer
you,
to the question.
yeah, I definitely think you answered the question. And shout out to maternal fetal medicine. That's something that my wife plans on getting involved in as well. So inshallah, y'all be working together in the future. Let me see here. Oh, there we got something from Joshua.
Yeah, I'll put it on. Put it up.
There you go.
So it's one thing to get into and graduate from med school, yet there's another process for residency and fellowship, which creates another barrier for our people. Many of our people may look at what comes after med school and become discouraged. That's a beautiful point.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she answered the questions. All praise to Allah. So,
Praise
yep.
be to Allah.
Thank you for
All
that.
right.
Point.
Excellent. All right, so we got another question, and it's beautiful to hear Joshua speak that way because he's an electrical engineer,
Right.
and he understands the importance of being able to be successful once you leave medical school. Because, like you said, medical school and then afterwards is like a whole nother type of difficulty, and it's sad because you have students that graduate from schools in the Caribbean, they come back to the States, and it's so much harder for them to get into residency programs. So, Dr. Farrakhan, you are a shining light,
Absolutely.
and Dr. Mayada, Jabril's sister-in-law, they're shining lights for those who are coming out of the Caribbean or those who are coming out of other countries and studying medicine. They're coming over to the United States to finish their training. Y'all are inspirations to them. Y'all be inspirations to us because we're about to do that exact same thing. So it's
Can
just,
I really shout you out for that? I know you on your own platform.
Oh, nah. I'm good. You good?
First of all, I am so proud of you and your wife for getting accepted into medical school. And that's one of the things that we have to stop doing is and unfortunately and feeding into like, oh, you're from a Caribbean school or you're from abroad and you study medicine abroad. Listen, medicine is universal.
Come
Let's
on,
not
teach.
forget that.
Right.
Medicine is universal. So you can learn medicine whether it's in the Caribbean, in Europe, in the United Arab Emirates. Like it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
As long as you are coming back to serve your community, to heal your community, all praises due to Allah.
Come on now.
Absolutely. Woo! Man, thank you so much. We appreciate that. That's so it's a beautiful experience, and we're just thankful that we get to do it together. But enough about us.
Right. Come on.
I had to come reel myself back in for a minute. I was feeling myself a bit. But so the next question we got is from Kiera again. Are you all interested in implementing public health professionals into the initiative as well and expose the students to epidemiology and disease tracking?
Yes, excellent question. And the quick and short answer to that is absolutely. One of the things that we did in our original program is we are looking at research. And one of the research outcomes that we're trying to figure out is whether race concordant versus race discordant mentorship has any effect on perceived ability to overcome and persevere obstacles while on the track to becoming a medical student, right? Because we're dealing with students. And I was talking to, I would say, an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion, a Black man who is just absolutely phenomenal. His name is Dr. Devin Lee. And one of the things that we were talking about, him and I, was, why do mentors necessarily have to be your same career path?
Right,
and I was like, they technically don't.
Right.
And honestly, I am of the thinking, and I firmly believe that any one person needs multiple mentors, right? So your career mentor and your physician mentor and your spiritual mentor
Come
are
on.
different. They have different functions that they play in your life, right? So when we're talking about this program and expanding it, improving it, one of the things that him and I were discussing were, okay, we are trying to build better physicians, but not just clinically, but culturally and socially. And what does that look like? Do you need someone who is in the social realm, a sociologist, or someone who has a background in that, and someone who's more grassroots and in the community that really enact change on a I would say on a more communal level, right? And so I think when we're talking about epidemiology and other health professionals or health uh, therapists who are important in the entire well-being of a person, right? This biopsychosocial um, framework that we're looking at. We have to think about other things. We can't just talk about physicians, but I think we do need to incorporate mental health as well as the epidemiology and the and just experts from all realms and backgrounds, right? Because white coats kind of have this uh presentation or this representation to our community of being kind of like these agents or conduits of change, but we don't necessarily have all the answers, right? So what we can either do is we can partner with other individuals and other groups who, and we come together, and it's kind of like this entire collaboration is what helps build our community up. Or we can also take on some of the responsibility and arm ourselves with these different facets of understanding so that we can be better with what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So definitely, most definitely.
Can I make a comment to
Excellent,
something
excellent.
you just said? Before we continue, as you were talking, and I was thinking about the title of this show, exposing youth to medicine. One of the things that my mind went to is the distinction that must be made in mentorship as a fad or mentorship as a means to an end versus mentorship as a lifelong long journey in terms of how you engage it. When we talk about mentorship as a whole, in a holistic sense, you have your technical, you have your non-technical mentors. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us in the Nation of Islam that we should always have a student mentality. Basically, if we were to put what we know on the head of a pen, there would be much room for it to move around. And that's in every aspect of what it is we think we know. We could be
That's
deemed
right.
an expert by our fellow man. We could be deemed a novice. The expert and the novice size of know-how put on that pen is very similar when you if you look at the size of it relative to the pen. So what does that mean? We have to be humble. We have to remember that our mentorship cannot be geared towards, oh well, I want to lord over somebody, or I want to get to this point in life. No, someone is your better, or you are someone's better in some way, shape, or form. So the ability to recognize the need for consistent growth is important for perpetual motion forward. So mentorship becomes a way of life as opposed to a tactic used for just propelling forward in one's career. Right? See, when I'm engaged in mentorship, now my community starts to be better. My household is better. If I'm engaged in true mentorship, my marriage is improving.
That's right. That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying? My pockets might get fatter, but I have in the mindset they're getting fatter not to stay there. They're getting fatter to then improve my community, to improve the world.
Right.
See, if I'm engaged in true mentorship, I know and understand that to do for self is important, and my goal in life should not just be to get to the peak of an ivory tower, but to then establish my own, and now have a level of not just success but pride in something I created that is not just getting the crumbs from somebody's table. See, we talking about real mentorship today.
Come on, come on, come on, come on,
right?
Come on.
And that's we have to just flip the scale when it comes to how we engage it and how we try to move forward in that truth. So I just wanted to add that real quick. Thank you, Dr. Farrakhan, for your time.
No,
Student Minister Jabril Muhammad coming with the bars and the heat.
Chill.
Praise be to Allah. All right. We got another question. Okay. So I wanted to see about wow. I just want to bask in what bro just said real quick. that resonated so hard because that's literally the topic of the show.
Right.
It's mentorship and how important that is. So, bro, we definitely gonna make that a clip on the Instagram page. So if you see yourself being flooded all over social media, bro, you know what I do, man.
Just make sure we got 10 times as many clips of Dr. Farrakhan than me. I'll be satisfied.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we got another question from the Black Math Academy. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it becoming a physician, and how would you encourage someone who may be struggling or giving up? And you touched on this a little bit, but is there anything you'd like to add to that now that the question is kind of just set up?
I think that how hard is it to become a physician? I honestly think that there are times when it's a 5 or a 6. And then there are times when it's like an 8 or a 9, and it almost seems impossible, right? I think the biggest thing is to kind of just keep going. And, when you're in your studies, sometimes it's so difficult, but you're just saying, I just got to keep going. I just got to make it to tomorrow. I got to make it to next week. And it kind of becomes this like survival thing, right? Where you're just like, I'm just trying to survive medical school. And I remember I told myself, like, I survive. Now it's really, really time to thrive. And I feel as if I'm finally coming to that point. Because it's hard. Like I've been, I graduated a year ago, and I am studying for boards, which can be 8, 10 hour, 12-hour studying. So, sometimes I get discouraged, and I'm like, man, I have my medical degree and I'm not practicing yet. But one of the things that you have to know is that your journey is your journey, right?
That's right. It's yours.
You can't rush it. You can't. And I remember a brother told me, I think he was talking, and I don't want to mess it up, but I know I will, so y'all can correct me. But I think he was talking about, I don't know if he was talking about Prophet Muhammad or the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he was talking about how he would be able to do some sort of an assignment in like, a couple days. And Allah granted him, like, oh, okay, maybe I can get it done in a week. Oh, it's gonna take a month. Oh, it's gonna take a year. Oh, it's gonna take 2 years. Oh, it's gonna take 5 years. And it ended up, he kept having to extend the time period in which he thought he was gonna be able to do something. And eventually, it was like he had to enjoy the journey, right? And I wish I knew exactly. I'm probably going to get off of here and figure out who said it and when was it said and where it was scripturally.
Sounds like it might have been down to Elijah Muhammad, just based on what you just said. But shout out to my father-in-law for watching the show. But no, so it might have been just from the wording and the way you the things that you were saying in that. Now maybe Jabril can shed some light on that, but it sounded like that might have been the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
I was gonna say, I feel like it was the most honorable Elijah Muhammad when he was talking about having the knowledge of Master Farah Muhammad and getting our people.
Yeah,
and he's like, with this knowledge, I could get them in no time with this truth. But you realize
that was him. Yep.
Oh, that's him. That.
Yep.
So he was saying, I was trying to put my ministry class cap on. I was trying to get in that bag for a minute. I was like, I think it had something to do with, and where the students at in the chat? Come on now.
No, because he had said
classes
that
in session.
He said that he didn't expect for it to be so hard to resurrect and teach his people.
Right. Come on.
He thought he could just do it overnight, but he realized it was a lot of work. So yeah,
So
I think
and that's
6 months may have been a time frame thrown around. I think if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. I looked it up.
right. And we still trying to get our people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I mean that just kind of speaks to you have to be willing to persevere despite all of the obstacles and challenges. And even if you create a path, you create a timeline, you're disciplined, that doesn't mean that Allah isn't going to throw something in your path to see, do you really want what you say you want? What is the
Oh,
heart
Allah.
and the spirit and the mind that you're
Right.
coming with? You know,
Right.
so
Right.
I think that, on a scale of 1 to 10, sometimes it's a 10, sometimes it's a 3, like I can just, it just varies, but you have to be willing to withstand it when it is a 10 and not take it for granted when it is a 3,
Right. Right.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
I was just talking to my wife about that earlier this afternoon about um, you know, just because you may, like you said, maybe disciplined or you may be, you have all these plans and you set up a certain way. That doesn't mean Allah's not going to come in and be like, I'm gonna take this away from you. You still want it?
Right. Come on.
It depends, like you said, your spirit, your mentality. Are you doing this to throw it in people's faces? Are
Come
you
on.
doing this to say that you're better than somebody, or are you doing
Come
it to
on.
really help your people? So
Right. Talk about it.
he's the only one that you can't lie to.
right.
You can't, show this to them and be like, I'm gonna send Allah DM real quick so he see that, and that's just how it is. Nah. He sees
Right.
everything. He sees all your intentions. He sees everything that's involved in what you're doing. So you better be right with it, or it's not gonna go the way you want it to go.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So I think that was an excellent question, because I don't think anything, and I think the minister told me this personally, and he was just saying, anything of value has a level of difficulty attached to
Attached
it.
to it. Come on.
Right,
That's one of my
right.
favorite
The
quotes.
greater the difficulty, the greater the reward, but it's a lot of perseverance. And I remember the minister told me, he said, I know you're tired. This
Mm.
was last year. I had been in Cuba 7 years. My father passed away, feeling like I was alone in Cuba. And he was like, I know you're tired. I was in school for, I think, 11 years straight after high school, so it was just like, he said, I know. He said,
Right.
but you got this. And so it's definitely going to have its challenging moments, and not even outside of just the academic part, but I mean, mentally, it's really tough. I would say more than physically, it's the mental aspect, because you have to you really have to tell yourself that you are a God, because when you look at the statistics, when you look at the facts and you see, okay, Black working physicians only make up 4 and 5% of the US physician workforce, but we're 13 and 16% of the population, or it's going to cost $250,000 to go to medical school. It's going to require me to actually put finances to the side for 10 years sometimes to just be a student. So there's this delayed economics. And let's just be real, a lot of us in our community, our parents don't have it, our grandparents don't have it. So when we think about going to medical school, sometimes people delay going to medical school just for the simple fact they're like, I gotta help my mom, I gotta help my
Come on.
they
Come
can't
on.
they can barely keep the lights on, or they're struggling. But if I go to school for another 10 years, that's 10 years that I'm not contributing. So there's a lot of mental strength that is involved, because if you grew up in the public school system, you were kind of taught that you were inferior. Let's just talk about it. 16, 19, people don't even want to bring that into education in some places. You senators and governors who are like, we don't want to talk about slavery or the history of African Americans or Blacks in America in the transatlantic slave trade, or that's where they start sometimes our history. So it's like when you are being raised in an environment where you're taught that you're inferior, you're going to have a serious disadvantage just for the simple fact that you may not think that you are mentally and intellectually capable to withstand and understand all that is within what makes us who we are. But it's so beautiful because this is we're studying, and I'm studying the body, and I said, how am I supposed to master the teachings and I don't even understand and can't master the understanding of of the human body?
Right,
So,
right.
you know,
Oh no.
There's so much. We can make like 18 videos from this.
just take out all the stuttering.
Oh no.
Man,
Good
man.
God.
All right. So
but seriously, that's real. That's real.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's the deficit. That's the difficult part. So yeah, you know, when you write down a plan for somebody, it becomes easier because it's just like follow the blueprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no person's path, and it's even harder within our community, the path to just be straight. You know, they say, if you want to get from A to B, the quickest way to get there is a straight line. But how many of us actually go on the straight path and stay on the straight path? There's so many twists and turns and valleys and peaks. It's just, you know, it makes it challenging. So, man, I took that question.
No, you good.
So we want to do two more questions, family. And first off, I want to say something. All right, before we continue, I got to do this real quick. Absolutely. See, we have been live at the STEM Files, family. Y'all been with us. We thank y'all so much on Facebook, the STEM Files, YouTube, the STEM Files. Please make sure you continue to like, comment, and share this content. Tariq Cardiac, your brilliant engineer, joined by the wonderful and dynamic sister doctor, Maryam Farrakhan. Family, we want to ask two more questions as we segue to close the show. But we definitely thank y'all for really being here and moving forward. We got another comment from Shahid the scientist. Okay, got a little bit of Spanish up in there. Oh, okay, yes, sir. Look at him. Yes, sir. But I have one question I wanted to ask. My mother-in-law actually asked it. So she said, Assalamu alaikum. Did you see the scout ships on a regular basis while studying in Cuba? My daughter would see them regularly. So I know that's something that we talk about as a family a lot off and on. And we want to just know what's your thought process on that. Or have you had that experience? Oops, I'm gonna keep that there.
Y'all make me feel like I got ADHD or something. Y'all like, I'm gonna keep that right there. I've never heard of scout ships. What's
the baby planes?
Oh, I'm like scout ships.
Yeah, I had to know people called them different things growing up too.
Got you. Okay, got you. I'm like, ships. I don't know what that is. You know what? I think that I did see them. One time when I was in Cuba on the water in Baracoa. However, I'm not sure because me personally, I needed to be close. Okay, so I'm gonna just be real honest. I believe that I saw them while I was in Cuba, but I'm not 100% sure because they were too far away, and I keep telling them to come closer, which is hilarious because when I was with the minister and the minister saw them, I said they look like dots.
You know, but it's something to be said about looking with a spiritual eye in addition to what you to your physical eye as well. So absolutely, I feel you on that too because my wife talks about seeing them, and I'll be like, "You sure?" And I'll be looking. I'll be like, "Oh no, I feel you," but I'll be like, "I don't want to get too excited," but absolutely. So we have another question. No, for real, from Pamela Fudge, a beautiful question. She said, "How hard was it for you to learn medicine in a foreign language?" That always blows my mind. And are you fluent in Spanish? what were some adaptive methods you used to make it through an unknown territory? Beautiful question.
Shoot, learn medicine itself is another language.
I love
Right.
these questions. I love
Mhm.
every question here. Okay, so how hard was it for me to learn Spanish? It was extremely difficult for me personally. I went to Cuba only knowing hola. So I was like, it was extremely difficult for me. And in addition to that, you would have thought it would have been easier because I was just coming from studying in Paris and was learning French. And most people say, oh, once you got two languages, 3 and 4 is nothing. No, not for me.
Mm.
I was confused. I was trying to speak Spanish, speaking French, couldn't remember which language was which. It was like, it was no, it was ridiculous because I remember being in school and being like, entre, and they would be like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? And they was like, it's entre. I'm like, dang, they spelled the same way. Like literally languages. And I said, you know what? So I quit speaking French so that I could learn Spanish. And now I'm trying to pick it up again. But so that was extremely difficult, learning a foreign language and trying to learn medicine at the same time. I felt like and I used to say it, I felt like I was learning 3 languages at one time because I was taking biochemistry in Spanish and taking medical. I said, this is 3 languages. I know I'm multilingual at this point because it was challenging, but I got through it. And honestly, I have to shout out my Caribbean sisters because they helped me through that like pivotal foundational years in medical school because I was the one that was probably dragging the class, because I was just like, wait, I don't get it. And then we going to her after class.
We're gonna handle Maryam. We're gonna talk to sister.
We got her.
Keep going, professor. Keep going.
Yeah. So and then the second part of the question was, what were some adaptive methods you used to make it through an unknown territory? 2 things I would say. When you're in an unknown territory, you really have to embody humility, right? Because if you aren't humble, and then you can't really be receptive of a new environment, a new culture, a new language, and it can really stifle your experience, right? Of course, I had times where I hated med school. I think anybody does have a period where that happens, right? But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed living abroad, and it wasn't my first time being abroad, but I was exposed to that at an early age because my mother had owned her own travel agency when we were younger. So this unknown physical territory, being in another country, it was new, but it was also, I guess, kind of familiar to me in a sense where I loved to explore. That's one of the reasons why I decided to study medicine abroad, is because I wanted to have friends from all over the world. I wanted to be in a different country. I wanted to learn about the rich history and the political climate, and that interests me. So, to really adapt and enjoy this process, I had to, one, come with much humility and appreciation for the Cuban people, and being willing to understand not only Cuban culture, but there was about 120 other countries represented in an international school. So my first encounter, because I came a couple days late, my first encounter, I was with people from Angola, Tanzania, and other countries, and I wasn't with American students. So I quickly had to learn how to respect people's culture and read, people's body language and try to understand what they were saying so that I wouldn't be offensive. And just have that mindset of wanting to explore, wanting to learn. And I think when you come with that open mindset and you are humble and you are sincere, it's easy to navigate unknown territory.
Excellent.
Wow. Humility, sincerity, and just a desire. Move
Right,
everybody
right.
along, family. We actually saw 2 more questions, and then we are going
Right.
to segue into the
right. And feel free to treat these questions like a speed round. Don't you don't
Okay.
gotta just do it.
Like, don't be the minister, okay?
Nah.
We
in closing. No, sorry.
Right.
In closing. Come on now. Come on.
For the 5th time.
We actually told the minister that he does 3 in closings before he closed, and we would start counting. So it was
all the
funny.
time. I mean,
And-
that's number
and
1.
we let them
Number
go.
2.
That's
Come on now.
Right.
It
All
would
right.
be
So we got
funny though when he would
Okay,
catch
bro.
himself.
Yeah, it'd be
But
like,
yes,
I
sir.
said
I
that
would just
already,
notice.
right?
Right.
I remember that. I remember that.
I would definitely be in the audience counting like that's 2. We got 30 more minutes, y'all. Like we ain't done.
Oh man, absolutely. So we got one more. We got 2 more questions. This one's from Anthony Muhammad. He says, the advice I was given by a counselor in med school was that most things just have to be remembered. What advice would you give to a student on how to better memorize concepts learned in medical school?
That's a good question.
I would definitely say mnemonics helps you to memorize different concepts. So I personally do better with, and it is a lot of memorization. And unfortunately, the only way that you can really memorize something, unless you have a great memory, is repetition. And repetition is like key.
My mother used to say that all the time. Right.
Repetition. And then I would also say definitely trying to understand the concept, because even if you don't remember, because there are things that you're going to see and then you might not see it until months, years later, right? But if you really understand the concept and try to relate it to a person, I feel like it kind of sticks more, or at least for me it does. So that's what I would say, because after a while it can kind of all sound very similar. So mnemonics, repetition, and trying to relate it to an actual person, or I would say those are the 3. Try to make it relatable.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very good advice. Definitely good advice. So the next question is from Exo Taj, and he says, Dr. Farrakhan, my name is Elijah Taj, mom, CEO of F Resistance. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, bro.
EF Resistance.
EF Resistance. Oh, okay. Wait. This is this brother Elijah?
I have no idea.
Okay, you say your Rocketeer is fire, and my question is, what is the vision that you would like to see for man in the next 5 years for evolution?
This was a great question.
This is why I wanted to save it for last, because it's not off topic, but it's kind of like a closing. Like,
right.
How do you see society in the next 5 years?
Okay, how do I see society in the next 5 years? The funny thing is, I'm trying to get my life together in the next.
Right. Come on.
Right.
How do I see society? Let's see. Okay, so we're in 2021, basically 2022. So in 2027. Ooh, okay. It's either one or 2 ways.
Okay, give it to us.
Okay, so either we are going to be in a point where we're kind of at complete separation, right? Because it's just so toxic, chaotic, stressful, and just backwards. And I'm talking about society in general, where we're going to start seeing, like, we're already seeing the fall of America, right? But just to a greater power is kind of how I either see that, or depending on how fast this nation, and when I say nation, I'm talking about the United States of America and countries, continue to go, if we continue to kind of like speed up on this downward spiral, maybe we'll be starting to see a glimpse of heaven on earth.
I love it. I love it.
Wow.
I agree.
Profound. And that's, I agree as well, you know, because we already looking at the eye of what could very well be the hereafter, and seeing signs of what the world is going to be like, especially if America doesn't tighten up on how it treats its people. So it's coming. It's definitely coming, and it's here. Wow. So this has been another edition of the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture for the Black and Brown family. You know, we are eternally thankful for you coming back on the program, Dr. Farrakhan. Just like we said in the beginning, this is your third time being on the show, and every single time you're on the show, you make it. You give us an experience that we were expecting and then some. You know, so thank you so much. And yeah, Jabril, I'm done. Like, I have nothing.
No,
else.
I'm dumbfounded too, bro. Because there's been so much information, so many vibes, so much to think about and use for ourselves. But I just want to take this time to just thank everyone for rocking with us, asking all your questions, being super engaged. You know, showing the level of consciousness in our community. You know, not only for our guests, but for our audience. We have a high level audience that comes every week and taps in with us on our platform. We appreciate y'all. Without y'all, you know, we don't have a reason to exist. So thank y'all so much for tapping in with us.
Two more things, bro. Two more things.
Okay.
So before we do that, I want to do this real quick. The social media tapping. Just kind of tell us what's going on in this picture, Dr. Farrakhan. We like to take something from your social media and ask you about it. So in this picture, it looks like you're assisting with a surgical procedure. So what's going on here?
So this was a live donor partial liver transplant that was being done at the pediatric hospital in Boyeros, which is just right outside of Havana, but it's, in the provincia of Havana. And we were at the pediatric hospital, and there was a young boy who needed a new liver. And so his aunt, I do believe, was his donor, a live donor.
Wow.
So, yep. That is that photo.
and just for the record, family.
That was a long surgery.
And just for the record, family, there is no HIPAA violations being made here. There were no names, no images, or anything of that nature being mentioned on this particular part of the program. So if anyone that shut up, HIPAA violations, wrong. There's no HIPAA violations being made here. I just wanted to, very passionate about that. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you showing patient information?" No, you don't got no idea what's going on in this picture. It's just people and you just got people in surgical masks doing the procedure. You have no idea what's going on, and you don't know who it is on that table. So please,
come on now, yes sir. No, hey, get it, talk, cause I that ain't my area of expertise, but lay it out for him. But yeah, go to our next guest, bro.
Right. So our next guest. So our next guest is it up?
Yep. Oh, hold on. I think there you go.
Oh, I can't see it. But our next guest is Brother Robert E. Muhammad. He's a former student first officer in Brooklyn, but he's also an epidemiologist and a population health expert. And he's going to be talking to us about the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. So definitely tap in next Thursday, November 4th, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Looking forward to this. We've been having a series of, we just don't know how many medical professionals we have in our nation. And it's such a beautiful thing when you discover them, but when you find out about them and you start working with them. So this is beautiful. Definitely looking forward to this November 4th. Definitely check us out.
Praise be to Allah. And lastly, but certainly not least, Dr. Maryam, I'm sure there are so many people like, oh, how can I get in touch with her? How can I follow you? I want you to speak to my students. Take on my daughter. Talk to me. Right. How can people know more about you? How can they connect with you for more information?
So my IG is at the bottom. So at mfargon. My email, maryamfarrakhan@gmail.com. I actually do check my email every day. Um, I'm actually creating a new handle, and I guess maybe I should try to type it in as well, specifically for that's going to be medicine and mentor related. So I'm going to type it in really quickly, see how good my skills are.
No, let me take that off.
Oh, too many characters. Hold up. Okay, do you see it? Okay, cool, perfect. So at mfargon, or at paging.dr.farrakhan. So those are my two handles on IG. Email me. I'm here. I would love to set up a meet with like-minded individuals so we can continue this journey of mentoring in medicine, in STEM, and just promoting Black excellence.
Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, family, thank you all for tuning in. This is Tariq Muhammad, your brain engineer. Follow us on all our social media handles, the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter, and the STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube. Jabril, anything to add or to close this out with?
Nothing other than keep striving, keep grinding. Your journey is your journey. That's the biggest takeaway I took from tonight. Thank you for supporting.
Facts.
Continue to come back and get this great content as we strive to show that not only are we Black in STEM, but Black is STEM. Tune in next time, family. Peace, love, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week and after.
Peace.